Are you someone that struggles with self-worth or difficulties, work-life balance, or battling some kind of a health challenge? Then this episode of Books with Bridgetti is just for you. We're going to be sharing some real stories of women, and they will tell us firsthand of what they have overcome. In fact, the book we're talking about today is She is an Overcomer. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Thanks for having me on your live show. It was really my pleasure. Your production is just fantastic. Unbelievable how you guys are pulling that off. So organized with segments and transitions and all those different things. Right in line with what I'm talking about in my new book, Going live stream your podcast to reach more people. Hopefully people tune in for our conversations. Definitely worth the on-demand version, in my opinion, if I may say so myself. You guys are awesome.
I think this might be, I've been on over 24 different podcasts and radio shows in the last couple of months, and this has to be one of the most sophisticated, what the kids that I used to teach call bomb.com shows and presentations that I've ever been on. It looks fantastic.
I love your introduction. How professional. That sounds, I feel like I'm on a beautiful show here.
Folks, welcome.
Available wherever great books are sold near you.
Oh my goodness, Ross, thank you so much.
Thanks. And, this is one of the most fun interviews that I've ever done. So thank you, Bridgetti.
Big pleasure. Ross, take care.
Thank you.
If you've just joined us, welcome to the show. This is Books with Bridgetti, and I am your host, Bridgetti Lambanda from Cape Town in South Africa. Our stream is made possible by StreamYard and Be Live Media. So a special warm welcome whether you're watching us over on Twitch, on Facebook, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, or over on Amazon Live. A very, very warm welcome to you. It is great to have you here. In today's show, we're going to be welcoming the authors of an anthology called She's an Overcomer. You're going to be meeting some amazing women that have overcome things that you may be struggling with, and their stories are truly, truly inspirational. So one of the things that I'm very passionate about, and something that I do at the beginning of all the shows, is sharing some tips and tricks that can help you become successful online. Thanks to the pandemic, we've got unique opportunities as authors. We are no longer limited to a library or our immediate locale, because we can now reach a global audience. Sure, book signings are fun. Being able to go and read your book to children at school, to be able to do book readings at libraries are fun, but you can do that online as well and reach a global audience. So you now have opportunities to expose yourself, your brand, and your book to a worldwide audience. Now, one of the things that a lot of people do when they talk about their books online is use their phone, because who doesn't have a phone, right? So when you go live on platforms like TikTok and Instagram, for example, you are most likely going to be holding your phone in portrait mode, and that is 100% correct. And the reason for that is when you are going live on TikTok or Instagram, it's going to be using the entire real estate of the phone in portrait mode. However, if you are going to be using your phone to go live on any of the other platforms like Facebook or YouTube, for example, you may wonder why you get those black lines on the side. there's a quick fix for that. Just simply go into your settings, whether it's an Android or an iOS device, it doesn't matter. Just turn off your screen lock and turn your phone into landscape mode before you go live. That's the key. Do that before you go live, and it'll get rid of those black lines that you see on the side. And it's now easy because you've got a big screen real estate to talk about your book, use your hands, be animated. Um, and one of the things that you can do is, or that you want to do, is not hold your phone in your hand. It's impossible to hold your phone dead still and have your book in your other hand and talk. It's impossible. It's going to make your audience feel seasick. So you want to use whatever tripod you've got. I mean, they're just a whole bunch of, there are tons of tripods. So kind of just take your pick, see what you like the best and use that. But if you do find yourself on the road, in a hotel room, or you've forgotten your tripod at home, here's a quick hack. Simply take your phone in landscape mode, and put it onto the window. Use some sticky tape or some press stick. And the great thing about that is when you put your phone on the window like that, you're going to have it at a 90-degree angle, which is just perfect. And you're also going to then have front-facing light, because if you have light coming from the back, and I know my light is less perfect at the moment because I've got a power outage, and so I'm using backup lighting today. In fact, if you do um, if you're going live on a laptop and you're wanting to upgrade to a webcam, which is a better quality picture than what you'd have on your built-in laptop, the Logitech Brio has built-in right side technology, which means it'll automatically adapt to your lighting conditions. It's a fabulous camera. The other thing you want to do to avoid background noise or feedback is invest in earphones. And again, there's tons and tons of earphones. Take your pick. Um, whatever works for you. Bluetooth, a caution. Sometimes they do switch off. They don't always last. So it's better to have wired earphones, because then you're guaranteed to not have an issue while you're talking. You can also level up by using a plug-in like a lavalier microphone, and that'll give you a better sound quality, especially if you're moving about in the room while you're talking about your books. There's also the iRig. So there's a whole bunch of gadgets that you can use to level up when you are talking about your book online. Now let's move on to our amazing authors. So we've got 3 authors in the studio that's going to be talking about their contribution in the anthology, She is an Overcomer. And so the first lady that we've got is Kaitlin Kreczmer, and she is the founder of Master Your Body Mindset Coaching. Kaitlin helps women step into their confidence so they can reclaim their lives. And sometimes we do need to do that. And sometimes we need a bit of help. So that's what she helps women do. She says she spent much of her life doubting herself and associated her appearance with her self worth. I think there are a lot of women who can relate to that. And she says after extensive weight gain at the age of 29, she took accountability for her life. She bossed up and lost a whopping 100 pounds. And it transformed her mindset, and she detached her appearance from her self-worth. A lot of women struggle with that. So we want to hear her story. And so she says her mission is to support every woman and every body. The other lady that we've got on the show today, author, is Tankua Dyer, and she is she served as captain in the United States Air Force and was selected as the protocol officer and military equal opportunity chief. She also served as a section commander of the 820th Security Forces Group. And as a civilian, she continues to serve the men and women in the Air Force in the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility Office. And she's currently working on her PhD. Wow, phenomenal. So she helps women prioritize themselves and find a balance between work and family. Jessica Madrigal is a creative digital marketer, website and graphic designer, and author. She co-founded Salted Orange Studios as well as the Underdog Ninja Foundation for heart disease with her husband, and they are first responders, veterans, and their families prevent and live. They help families prevent and live with heart disease. So, without any further ado, let's just give a warm welcome to these ladies. Ladies, welcome to the show. I am so pleased to have you in the studio with me today. I want to first start by asking you how you got involved in this anthology. How did you meet Linda? Um, so, Kaitlin, I'll start with you. How did you meet with Linda and how did you get to be in this book?
Yeah, so I had the privilege of meeting Linda in actually a coaching program. We were in this program together, and there was something about her energy in some of our group coaching, and I knew I had to reach out to her. And I found out that she was a publisher, and part of me has always wanted to be a writer. I love literature. I love English. It was my major in university, so I knew I had to connect with her. So I did, and we had a wonderful chat over Zoom. And through our conversation, I found out about She is an Overcomer coming out as an anthology. And I left it there. But then I thought about it again and I reached back out to Linda and they were still looking for a few more authors. And so I kind of expressed my story to her. And she said it would be a great contribution to the book. And so that was that. The next thing I knew, I was an author in She is an Overcomer. And it's been a phenomenal experience knowing Linda and Sally and all of these beautiful women who co-wrote the book with me.
Awesome. Greg, wonderful to hear your journey and how you got involved with Linda. Tankwa, how did you meet Linda and, how did you get to be in this anthology book?
Yes, a great experience. First of all, thanks for having me on your show. It was interesting because I was actually introduced to Linda from another author, and I was supposed to be talking to her about publishing my book, A Different Story. And we started talking and we talked about God and how God was really, bringing me through it, how he brought me through some things. And she said, I'm going to ask you this. And this is not what you call me for right now. She said, but I am doing a book and it's actually, the book is actually done, but I want your story in the book. You should definitely be in the book. And she said, the only caveat is I need it by midnight or I need it by tomorrow. I was like, by midnight? And she's like, by tomorrow. I was like, okay, maybe I can put something on paper by tomorrow because I'm working on my doctorate. So I'm used to doing some papers real quick. So I told her, I said, I'll do it. And when I tell you the conversation and everything was just such a blessing, and it has literally gone, it was overnight. That's how I tell people. I said, I'm an overnight author because that's literally not what I was thinking. I thought I would be writing and publishing my book and it's going to be, out by next year. But she said, let's do this. Let's put it in the book. And that's what happened. So she's wonderful. I love her, and Sally have answered all kinds of questions that I have. And but it's been a great experience. So that's how it came to be.
Awesome. Glad to hear your journey with Linda and how you got to be an overnight author. Jessica, tell us about your journey. How did you meet Linda and how did you get to be in the anthology She is an Overcomer?
Well, thank you, Bridgetti, for having me on this show as well. So actually, I am friends with Dara Bose, who is the one that decided that she wanted to start the journey with writing She's an Overcomer with a panel of women. And so I was at a retreat or a conference, I guess you would call it, for 3 days. Another friend of mine, she was putting on this conference for women, Kingdom Entrepreneurs, and Dara was there and I was there. And we had been online friends, sort of connecting through online communities. And we finally got to meet in person. And when we were there together, we just got into so many conversations. And she says, I need you to be in this book. And I've had many stories, over the years that I've been through it, and she's like, I know you got something. And so I said, you know what, I'm moving across the country like in 30 days, but Dara, I'm not sure. But I got to thinking about it, just like Kaitlin said, it was like I left it there. And then I came back and said, you know what, God's really leading me to be a part of this and to make sure that my story is a part of what he's going to do through this book. And so I will make it happen. So like Tonqueer was saying, I didn't do it overnight, but I did do it in one day because we happened to be living in Airbnbs as we were moving across the country. And I did it there. And I was just sort of like on this journey already. And I was writing my story there. And but it was just so meant to be because I met Linda subsequently through doing the book. But the whole experience has been amazing.
Wow, that is absolutely awesome. Thank you for sharing your story as well. We're going to take a really quick break. And when we come back, I'd like to dive into each of your stories, what the background to the story was, and how you decided to write about that specific story. Because a lot of us have got lots of stories within us, within our lives. But how did you decide on that particular story for this book? So we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about that. Welcome back. You're watching Books with Bridgetti, and I'm talking to the authors in the anthology She is an Overcomer. Kaitlin, so your chapter is chapter 13, A Bigamist and a Hovel, A Saving Grace. Now, first of all, you had to come up with a title. It's an interesting title, so I'd like to know what that's about, how you decided on that title, and how you decided that this was the story you wanted to share in She is an Overcomer. And have you got a copy of the book with you, Kaitlin?
I do. I actually have it right here with me. So this is
Awesome.
She is an
Just hold up that
Overcomer.
cover so everyone can see. It's a beautiful cover, isn't it?
It's beautiful. The colors. It's just,
Wonderful.
It's absolutely lovely.
So tell us about your chapter 13. How did you come up with the title first?
I know the title is quite odd, and that's exactly what I was going for. I wanted something that would make the reader question before they even dove into the chapter. So I'm glad that people do keep commenting on that, and that purpose was met. But just as the chapter says, I chose to write about my story because a bigamist and a hovel happened to be my saving grace, and the situation was the start of my new beginning. So as you said in my bio, I've struggled immensely throughout my life with my self-acceptance and my body image. And I always just kind of felt like I was on the outside looking in, and I would get jealous and compare myself to other people and see all of these success stories. And then I went on this internal journey, which resulted in an external journey of me losing 100 pounds and rediscovering and exploring myself and just finding my confidence and learning all these new things that I was interested in. And with that, I ultimately ended up getting divorced from my partner. I was married, but the divorce was a good thing because through my transformation and growth, we realized that we were no longer compatible, and as great of a person he was, we no longer aligned, and I was turning into this new person. We went our separate ways so that I can continue to flourish and grow in myself. So that was a good thing. And so after our divorce, I was, feeling more confident than ever. I had gotten my own apartment. I had a full-time job. I was doing it on my own. I was this brand new person. And then I began dating again, and I met this man, and it's super wonderful. I mean, everything that you could write down and manifest in your ideal partner, he was it. He was attentive. He had a great career, everything. He was an attractive person. So the list goes on. And so I met him, but soon into our relationship, after I had grown a pretty strong connection with him, I found out that he was not only a convicted bigamist from another province. I'm in Canada, so he was in a province next to where I was. But not only was he a convicted bigamist, but I found out that he was actually currently married to a cousin of a friend of mine. So I wasn't close with his wife, but I knew his wife and I knew their family. So that really shook me to the core. having been someone who always felt like I was on the outside and feeling like an introvert and not wanting to be the center of attention, to go through all these rumors, the wife decided to stay with him and basically brand me as a homewrecker and say I intentionally started this relationship with her husband to break up their marriage. And in a small town, that just brought back all these old memories. I didn't like being the center of attention. I didn't know what to do. And things in my mind started to spiral. And I was like, again, everyone's succeeding. My friends are having families. They have these awesome careers. They're buying homes or settling in their lives. And now I started to see my life in a negative again. I was now divorced. I decided what I had for a good career wasn't. It was a dead-end job that I was just getting by to pay my bills. I couldn't afford hydro. Hydro was quite expensive in the province where I was living. So I was in this basement apartment where enters the hovel. And I had very little heat in the winter. So I would sit there with a toque and sweater and just shiver. So I had that. So I started to spiral. I became depressed. I was now divorced in this crappy relationship, and all these other things were going on. And so I started having suicidal thoughts. And I'm a bath person. Baths are very comforting for me, but at that time they were not. It's where I would sit and have negative thoughts and contemplate taking my life. And I felt like, again, I wasn't worthy and things weren't going in the direction I wanted for my dream life. And so this is really where my new beginning came, because it's where I really came in tune with my faith. And one night when I was in the bath, I was looking at my wrist and thinking of what it would feel like to actually cut. I heard this voice, which I now know was God speaking to me. And he was like, this is not the end. This is not it. Let's pull ourselves up. There's more to you. There's more for you. You have to move on and up out of this. And so I did. Slowly but surely, I came up out of it. I turned in closer to my faith. I would listen for the voices and I would take the steps. And here I am, completely flourishing, inspiring women today, fully connected with myself, appreciating myself, and still believing in love.
Wow, you are the epitome of an overcomer, and I can see why you were the perfect fit to be in this anthology. Now,
Thank you.
your story will, without a doubt, inspire a lot of women.
Thank you.
But it's deeply personal. How did you, and this is something that holds a lot of people back from sharing their story and from writing their story and being in a book and getting published, because they find it difficult to let go of their story and put it out into the world. And that's just the way that we are. Oftentimes we feel ashamed by what had happened to us, and we internalize that, and we think that nobody else in the whole wide world could possibly understand or relate to our story. And more often than not, it couldn't be further from the truth.
Absolutely.
Whenever we release it, we realize that we are embraced by a lot of other people who can relate. So how did you let go? How did you get over that feeling of turning in your chapter? I want to know how you got past that emotion, because it is an emotional bridge that we have to cross before we feel, happy that we've done that and we've released it and we can now move forward. How did you get over that?
So the first thing for me was accepting and understanding that I didn't fully manifest this person. I wasn't the cause. It wasn't because I was in this lowly place, or I wasn't confident in myself, or I wasn't feeling full about myself, that I brought in this relationship. So it was first detaching the thought that this was my fault and I brought this man into my life and I'm responsible for his wife's feelings. So I had to let go of that. And to do that, I did a lot of writing. I wasn't a huge journaler before that, to be honest, but I turned to journaling quite a bit. And I wrote down a lot just to let out my thoughts and help myself realize that I wasn't the cause of this. And then from there, it was opening my heart again to trust. That was the hardest thing, to trust people I didn't know now who knew what with all the rumors going around town. I didn't know if I could trust men. So yeah, I think in order to detach, it was really just journaling and going back within to remind myself of how far I came in my last 30 years and how far I could go by just moving on. So I would talk to my friends, I would journal. Yeah, I think that was the biggest part of it for me. And then two was letting go of the rumors, just accepting that that was, his wife had to process as well what had happened. And that unfortunately was her way of doing it. And she had to kind of accept the situation and figure out things for herself. So it was not being mad at her and letting that go as well. She was processing, she did what she had to do in the moment. And at the end of the day, we're all people, and I respected her choice at the end, even though it hurt me. And so just reminding myself that we are all people and we are all capable of getting through the bad and creating the good is what helped me to move on. And I think I was encouraged by Linda to write this because she, like you, reminded me that you're never alone. You're not the only person that's been through this. And I even mentioned that in my chapter. At the beginning, I was thinking, how stupid is this woman to be married to this man? And then I was caught up in the exact same relationship when I've always considered myself a people reader, and I got caught up in it. So it happens easy and it happens often. And this was, I think, my way of finally closing the chapter and, in a sense, taking back control. You had your say, now here's my say, and now it's completely done.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Totally appreciate that. A lot of these feelings creep up on us over a long period of time. It's never just sort of one thing or one event. And hindsight is a crazy thing. We tend to beat ourselves up when we look through that mirror of hindsight. But well done for overcoming what you did and for writing your chapter, sharing yourself, sharing your story, and being an inspiration to other people out there. Tanquia, tell us about your chapter. Your chapter is I Have a Voice. Now, I thought that was an interesting chapter as well, because we all have a voice, but I think you mean more than just a speaking voice. So tell us what you meant by choosing that as the title for your book, and tell us a little bit about your story in the book.
Yes, thank you. So I have a voice. It came from my chapter is dealing with me being molested. To some people, that's still hard to even talk about, right? That's still something that a lot of people, and I'll be honest, that I think even in my family, it's a hard thing to accept and to deal with. So part of I'm having a voice is it truly happened to me. I need people to know this happened, it's real, and it affected my life. The title, however, came because the very last time that my stepfather came in my room, I was asleep, and when he came in my room and he touched me, I began to scream. At least I thought I was screaming. My mouth was literally open. I'm screaming for my mom, and it's like I'm saying mom, and it's like, but nothing was coming out. Like literally nothing came out of my mouth, but I'm mouthing mom. And from that point, it was like I had no voice. I was so fearful in that moment that I couldn't even speak. That's how fearful I was at the time. And so that's literally where the title came from. But in that, even in that moment of not being able to speak, to call for help, to get my mom's attention, over the years, I'd even told what was happening, but nothing was ever done. So part of me saying I have a voice was I felt like I didn't have a voice, because even though I was telling people what was going on, nothing was ever happened. I was never taken out of the situation, and nothing ever changed. There were times when he tried to look in the bathroom when I was showering or taking a bath or whatever, and he'd poke holes in the doors. and he'd look under the door, and my mom would just tell me to put toothpaste in there so you can't see through the holes, or put a towel under the door, and so he can't see under the door. So it was little things. Even people in church, the older ladies would say, "Oh, well, she needs to put more clothes on when she's walking around the house, or she needs to wear a robe when she's walking around the house," as if it was something that I was doing. Um, so that just kind of catapulted into me as a person. And a lot of people know, you speak in my biography about how I was a captain, and a lot of the things that I achieved. And through all of those achievements, Bridgetti, I was so depressed. I had very low self-esteem. I did not think highly of myself at all. And I did not trust people. I didn't trust at all. My marriage suffered from it. My husband couldn't even touch me at night. I would wake up in a cold sweat when he tried to touch me, because of what I went through. And it was to the point I was so depressed, didn't realize it was depression, because we don't talk about it. I was brought up in Pentecostal, so we don't talk about a lot of those mental illnesses in church. So I suffered with a lot of it, just feeling bad about myself. And it got to the point where I didn't want to live. And even after a very prosperous, what many would think a very prosperous career, I didn't want to live. I didn't. I didn't feel like life was worth living. And I found myself after my last miscarriage. I was leaving the hospital, and I was coming out of the driveway, and I remember thinking, God, I don't want to live anymore. I'd had enough of church. I'd had enough of the advice of what I'd heard. And I turned the corner, and I remember just closing my eyes, and just traffic was coming, and I just ran out into the middle of the road. And literally, I have no idea. I couldn't tell you how my car ended up on the side of the road, but I didn't hit a car. I don't remember any horns blowing or anything like that. But I remember thinking after that, God did not allow my life to be taken for a reason. I have to tell my story, and I have a voice, and I need people to hear what happened and how it traumatized me, so to the point I didn't want to live. And now, after going through therapy, after going through other things, you can't shut me up. You can't shut me up, and I'm gonna make sure that I'm heard, and I'm gonna make sure other women are heard. So even when it comes to, I also do life coaching. So even in the military, I have mentees, and they all coming to me, and they're like, "How do you get like that?" I'm like, "Honey, I don't know. I'd have to tell you a whole, my whole life story, but I know the importance of being true to who you are and expressing those things that really impact you." So that's where I Have a Voice actually was birthed from.
Wow, that's just a perfect title to your story. I actually read something very interesting just this morning, um, and I think it was by a lady who is a psychologist, and she said that the enabler is worse than the perpetrator.
Hmm.
And I thought that was an interesting statement because I pondered over it for quite a while. And I came to the conclusion that that is actually true, because I think there's so many people out there. I've spoken to a number of people who have been through all kinds of different abuse, and I think they are most angry at the person who enabled the abuse to continue,
Hmm.
because their voices were suppressed. So even
Hmm.
though they were voicing what was happening to them, either the mother or the father, usually within the family circle, if that's where the abuse occurred, they did nothing. They did absolutely nothing. And so you build up all that resentment and hatred for them, almost worse than what you have for the perpetrator, because they failed to protect you. So I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Kaitlin. Your story also is deeply personal, um, but there are so many. There are it's a horrible thing to say that, but there are thousands of people, men, women, children, who are suffering this kind of abuse. And especially because this kind of abuse is so deeply personal, you usually want to hold it close to your chest. So, how did you find your voice to let go of your story, and why did you want to share it with the world?
I share in the book. There was a class I started, marriage and family therapy. So part of my training, we have to do it, the internship part, or where you go to the class and you have to actually sit in the class with the professors for a week. I want to say I was in Dallas, and one of my instructors. This was maybe the second day of class, and everyone was in the room, and she came over, and she just looked at me, and she put her hand. She said, "See, there's a little girl right there on your shoulder." She said, "Tell that little girl that she's safe. Tell her that you protected her and she's okay now." She said, "Tell her it's okay to be who she is. She's safe." And when I tell you, I just broke down in the middle of that classroom. I was just crying because when you go through something like that, you feel you are guarded. You are so guarded from everyone, and you're not able to really be true to who you are sometimes. And when after she did that, it was more of just a breaking in me. When I don't know if you ever heard of Tasha Cobb's "Breaking Chains," the chains are broken. That's what it felt like. It felt like chains that were broken off me, that were holding me back from really speaking and being true. And the trust part for me was huge, because when I talk about how it was a lot of times that church people who gave my mom the advice to do what she did, and church people that told me that I need to put on more clothes and do this. I really shunned away from church for a very long time. And part of when she told me that she's protected, that little girl is protected, it was really God saying that you've been protected all this time. And my trust was, I had to learn to trust God. I had to really give over everything that I'd gone through to God. And so God began to just deal with me on so many levels. But the most important thing was to trust in Him, because part of it is I lost my trust in God. I felt like I was not protected by the ultimate Father. And God said, "You've never been without a father. You've never been without someone protecting you." Because every step of the way, even though it was my stepfather, I always felt like I had a father somehow. If it wasn't from my uncle, if it wasn't from somebody that God placed in my life, He let me know, you have never gone without a father. You have never not been protected. And the fact that you're still able to tell your story, oh, you have a father who is the ultimate father, who's been there, who's guided you, and you are where you are because of your father in heaven. And that is how I really got to the point where I started to be like, okay, I need to get help for everything that I'm going through. And I started seeking a counselor, and I started talking to her, and she said, "I don't usually pray." She said, "But do you mind if I pray for you?" And now think about it. I wasn't like all into church, even though, check this out, I was a minister. I was not into it like that because I didn't trust. And she said, "Do you mind if we pray?" I said, "No, I don't." And she prayed for me, and we just started praying. And when I tell you, God just started doing things, and He started orchestrating, and everything that I started feeling, it was like He was just releasing. Like every little thing He was releasing. When I didn't feel good about myself, He began to show me, "Oh, you are that. Oh, you are more than that." The more I poured into other people, the more I started getting poured back into me. And God just began to do things in me that I just did not know He could do. So a lot to unpack. It's not the end of my story. It's not the last time you'll hear my voice, but there's so much that I overcame just believing in myself, because I did the work in the military. I can do whatever I need to do, but actually believing in myself was something hard. So doing this book for me was very, very hard. And when she said she needed it overnight, I'm glad that Miss Linda said she needed it overnight, because it probably wouldn't have happened.
Oh my goodness. Wow. That is just so powerful. And you're probably right. If there wasn't that sense of urgency, you may have very, very likely chickened out and said, it's too much, I can't do this. but that sense of urgency and getting it out. How do you feel now that it's out there and that you are a best-selling author? Like, how does that make you feel?
So excited. And let me tell you, I was so concerned about what my family would say because people have gotten the book yet and they're like, T, it was so heavy, but it was so uplifting. And I can't believe that, you actually told this story. She said, a lot of my friends have called me and was like, T, I can't believe you told this story. And my cousins now, to know my family, because we're all in church. And so they can be very judgmental. But I mean, my cousins have said, I am so proud of you. Some of my older cousins, they're just like, I cannot believe that you had the strength and the boldness to tell it. They say, I'm so proud of you. I cannot wait till you write the rest of it. So literally for people who knew about what I had gone through, they have been so supportive. And I am so glad that I did. So glad that I did.
Well, I'm glad that you did too. I think what you've done is incredibly empowering, not just for yourself, but for people who read your story so that they know that if you could do this, they can do this too, and that there is hope, that you are an overcomer. There's, just so much power in what you did. And what's interesting about your story, it also helps people because a lot of times, you look at what you've achieved in your life, your level of education, what you do for a job. Um, you go through all those sort of feelings, but I shouldn't be feeling this. I am this is my job title, this is what I do for a job, I've got a degree, why is this holding me back? A lot of people can relate to that angst that goes with all that emotional turmoil. So, well done on you for finding the strength to share your story, and congratulations on becoming a best-selling author overnight. That is
Thank you.
phenomenal. Congratulations.
Thank
And now,
you.
Jessica, your chapter is called Finding, you've written chapter 11, Finding Unexpected Purpose Together. Tell us
Mhm.
a bit about that title. Give us an overview of your story, not everything, because we want people to go and read your chapter, but tell us how you decided on your story and how you decided on the title for your chapter.
Yeah, nope. No, this has been such a process of, I love that you were bringing up, how did you choose your story? Because acknowledging that we all have, gosh, Tank Queer, you're just amazing. I went through, just real side notes, some similar things, and I feel your journey. I really do. And so just know that it's a widely needed story. So bravo to you for sharing that so openly. Um, so when I was going through my stories with God, I was like, all right, so since you're telling me you want me to contribute to this book, what is it that you want me to contribute? I mean, I have all these stories, and I felt very strongly that a couple of them were not ready to share. Like either I'm not ready to share it, or God was still doing things in it. There's still testimony, in there that hasn't come about, whatever it was, I don't know. But he said, I want you to share this particular story. And it was about a story between my daughter and I on a medical journey that she is still going through and will for her whole life. But all the pivotal parts when she was diagnosed. And it felt very, how do I say this? God was like, I want you to share this for more reasons than you realize. So the reasons he had told me were, I want this to be an example to your daughter to share her story more, which she already does, but just it's the timely thing that she's 11 and sharing this and teaching her to do these things and to have faith in these situations. And then also something that most women who have children have gone through. As a mom, it is so common to go through any medical battle with your kids, whether anywhere from just a small illness to a major illness, something life threatening, any one of those things. You know exactly how, if you're a mom, you go right there. You know exactly what I'm talking about: the helplessness, the fear, the confusion, the weight, the burden, the fact that you need to go in your closet and cry not because you shouldn't show your feelings, but if you do, your child is going to be not have someone to lean on fully that they can fully emote. They're going to feel like they need to take care of you. And so all these things that we're really not able to do in that situation, we're really tied into, okay, we've got to be the rock for this child. We've got to teach them how to go to Jesus and all these things. And I just felt like God was telling me women need to hear more and more of these stories, because we have an enormous amount of mom guilt that we put on ourselves, and the decisions that we make are very much tied to our obligation, not in a negative way, but our role. We're so deeply emotionally tied to our roles that sometimes we don't give it to God. We're like, but I need to do this, but I'm supposed to do that, but it's my job. But what, they only have me, and we put so much on ourselves. And I don't think that it's always that we think we're doing a bad job. I think it's that we are so emotionally tied to the stewardship over our children, and then our love for them, and then our love that God is giving them through us, that we just don't lean on God in these moments the way that we should. And so he was like, you got to tell the story, because I had to so much lean on God, because it wasn't just a medical story that's like, oh, I have to go through the helplessness. I have to go through the fear. I have to go through the, not knowing what to do. Or it was a medical story, a medical battle for her and all of us, that nobody knew what to do. This is, she was diagnosed at age 8 with uncategorized connective tissue disorder, which is kind of like Ehlers-Danlos. And the story behind that goes with this is such she went through so much pain and real, not emotional, like mental trauma, like abuse trauma, but just so much pain and medical trauma, that she has completely changed as a person in a way that he's already using this as her testimony to minister to other kids her age. She does it constantly. He's using her already, boots on the ground. I mean, and she hears about anything from God and she's in tears. She just is so close to God through this. But the thing is that she had to go through so much that none of us had any idea what to do about. And without spoiling anything, there's definitely some absolute turning points in this story that you cannot miss. You've got to get the book and read through what God did. And so I wanted to touch on another reason why I chose this, and why I said finding unexpected purpose. I didn't plan on, and none of us do as moms, making this a story or having a testimony through this. You're just going through the battle over your children's health. That's it. You're just going through it. And God was just very clear with me that, when I want you to share these stories when you realize that they're not your stories. They're my stories. He said, the only way that I can share my glory and my love with others through you is through a story that you walk out. But it's his story. He's like, you have to go through these things in order for people to see the manifestation of my glory and my love and my mercy and my grace and my testimonies and my character and who I am and how to have a relationship with me. But it's really me sharing God's story. It's no different than me sharing somebody else's story. I just happen to have a very personal, emotional connection, so that my passion and my belief and my faith comes out so strongly that it's convicting and convincing and overtaking sometimes for other people, and inspiring, so that God can work in the deepest places in other people's lives. Unlike if I was to tell someone else's story, where it is still God's testimony, it's his story. But when it's my own personal experience, my pain, my emotion, my helplessness, my fear that I had to overcome with God's love. And then again, secondarily, my daughter, right? So many roles I was taking on. When I'm so deeply connected to that, I can then be able to reach someone so deeply through, or God can through me. So that's what he shared with me, that he wanted me to tell this story, because if you look at all my stories, if you knew them all, you would say, wow, this really isn't the hardest thing you ever went through. And it isn't by a mile. It was a lot. I mean, it was a lot, but it was not the hardest thing I ever went through. And it is not the deepest and the most painful thing. It's not the most confusing and most traumatic thing. Those stories aren't ready, right? But this one was it was perfect timing. And he really explained it to me. And I thought, wow, I just didn't know there was so much that you were going to do through this and continue to do. So that's why I chose this. It was unexpected purpose.
Wow, that is amazing. I know a little bit about Ehlers-Danlos, because a friend might be diagnosed with it, and I live with chronic pain and a whole bunch of chronic conditions. And that's a lot for a young girl, a young child to be dealing with, at a very, very young age. And I can relate to the helplessness that you have as a mom when you discover there's something um, that challenges your child and that is challenging you in a big
Yeah.
way. Because, there's nothing that prepares us for this sort of thing. There's no manual. When you
No.
decide to have a child, you you don't foresee all these things. You literally trying to build that, fly the plane as you're building it at the same time, and
Yeah.
that's no mean feat. You're literally learning as you go along. And your child is looking to you as the rock of information, of peace, of comfort. So a lot of moms out there can relate to your story. How did does your daughter know you wrote this book? How does she feel about it?
Ooh. So she read it finally, probably a week ago. Gosh, she cried for 2 hours. She just hugged me and said, "Mom, that's exactly what happened. Praise God." She said, her and her sister are twins, and they were just baptized like a month ago. And we always said, "No, God, you tell us when they're ready. You tell them to tell us. I'm not going to ask them to do something." And we're all very much like bringing them up, guiding them, but it's a very personal relationship. So we waited and waited. I'm over here as a mom. I'm like, come on, right? Knowing I'm going to bawl for a whole day when that happens, which I did. But she did this a month ago. And so she had just done that when she read, the story. And she was just like, it's only the beginning of my journey with God. It's crazy. But yeah, it is just it really brought us even closer. We're really close, but I mean, it's just such a thing for our whole family. We still, have to go through things with doctors who are like, I don't know what, our doctor's appointments are pretty much always, well, I can tell you what it's not. That's every doctor's appointment. No one ever has like what it is. It's always what it's not, which is great. I can tell you she doesn't have a brain injury. I can tell you she's, perfect, rolling out all the major things. But otherwise, it's very like unexplained, and everything's so she says she's a unicorn. She says, "Mom, I'm a unicorn. I'm a weirdo, and that's great." She's like spreading the weirdo vibe all throughout the world. It's I love it. She's so positive.
Wow.
Yeah.
All I can say is it's a lot for a child to go through. If I think of the years that I went through, many, many years, and many others out there, to get to the point where you can even get a diagnosis, that's
Right.
a heck of a journey in itself. Doctors have a tendency to invalidate what you're telling them, what you're feeling,
Yes.
what you're experiencing, and that's a
Yes.
whole nother story. You could write a book on
I could write a book
your
about
interaction with the medical fraternity and how they invalidate you and dismiss you, and that's just another story. So
Mhm.
wow, just thank you for sharing that. But does she realize that you now are a best-selling author because you shared her story?
Yes, and she's already been I like Kaitlin was saying, I was, AP Lit. I'm a writer. I do copywriting. We have a digital marketing company. So, it's just like, that's like, my wheelhouse. But I've never published anything because I don't know. I'm always working and I'm doing this stuff for other people. Not really something that I felt like I needed to do. And if I did, it was going to be a whole thing. So I was like, like I've got like 85 hats, I don't need another one, kind of a thing. Right. As a mom and a business owner, it's just like that. But, the thing is that I felt like this book, while we're all best-selling authors, I just think that it's the coolest thing that happened with it is that God never runs out of stories. He never runs out of these best-selling stories. There's a reason it's that it's best-selling, and that's because when God overcomes something in our lives, when he walks us through an entire situation and he brings out the glory and the victory in the end, the victory we already walk in, he's just blueprinting it out over and over, rinse, repeat. And he's just like, I'm going to put this out into the world and it's going to be for somebody. And that story is for somebody. Somebody's going to see that and see God's love, and they're going to turn. And I love that he never runs out of that story. I love that he will continually bring us through. And the best part about that is that we know the next time we go through something, that it will be the same way, that it will be ultimately a victory. And the reason why that's so important when it comes to the things that we deal with as moms, as women, is because we have to do all that stuff with controlling our emotions, and meaning we have to channel them, I guess is a good word. We have to channel them. So when you were talking about a best-selling author, like, to me, for me, it hit me different. I just felt very much like, yeah, but that's because all God's stories are best-selling stories. That's because that's what people are dying for. That's because that's why they're like, please give me the victory, give me the overcoming, give me the light at the end of the tunnel. Tell me that this is going to be okay, or that at least if it isn't, that God's going to make me okay, right? And so the more we can put these stories out there, and if it's best-selling, then it's getting into enough hands, right? That's the idea. And I love that, because then I can say I was part of something that God got it into enough hands, and his stories. Yep. And to me, in my life personally, just on a very personal level, everything about my life, because I lived so many years without God or in rebellion against God in my 20s, my dumpster fire years, I call them. All I do now is just want everything to tie back to, what am I doing for God to win today in somebody's life, in mine, and my children's, and a stranger's. And I felt like I was part of God winning in so many people's lives through something like this. So I am so grateful that it was best-selling, because now I can say that it got into the hands I think that God wanted it to. And so my daughter she sees this, and so she's constantly telling me about books that she wants to write and read. She reads books this big in like days. It's so crazy. I'm like, ugh, really? Like 3,000 pages. And she's just like, it's so ambitious. And so God has a plan for that girl. Like, I don't even, it's big, man. So this is something really cool that she can point back to. And I think it's great. Yeah.
Awesome. We're going to take a really quick break. And when we come back, I would like to know from you what your journey was like working with Action Takers publishers to get your book to print. Because I think that's a lot of authors or people hold back from getting published because they feel that the process is too daunting or too difficult. So I'd like to just hear what your journey was like with Action Takers publishers. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about that for a sec. Welcome back. You're watching Books with Bridgetti, and we're talking to some of the authors in the anthology She is an Overcomer, phenomenal stories from phenomenal women from around the globe. So, Kaitlin, I'm going to start with you. What was the process like for you from the moment you decided you wanted to go this route, become a published author, and working with Action Takers Publishing? Tell us what your experience with them was.
Yeah, honestly, a few words that come to mind: wonderful, easy, and efficient. Like I said initially, when I first met Linda and was talking about this book, I kind of left it aside because I've always wanted to write. I said that already as well, but I didn't know how daunting it would be to have a book, to market the book. How do you go about doing a book signing or a meet the author? People don't know me as an author. Like, how do I get my name out there, and how do I get the book out there? Just a million overwhelming questions that hold people back from doing these things. But Linda made it clear that Action Takers Publishing is very hands-on, and they 100% were. So all of the marketing materials, my gosh, they took on all of that. We were provided with what we needed to make this book successful. So I didn't have to worry about any of those extra stressors. And I think as a first-time published authors, I couldn't have had a better experience. And we had this fabulous group chat with all of us to kind of share ideas off of, who was going to take on this marketing strategy, who's ever done a book launch before, who's done a book signing before, and just able to learn from each other. But definitely, if you're first-time writers, Action Takers Publishing is a fabulous all-in-one to get you on your way without the extra stressors. And I don't know if I would be a best-selling author or an international best-selling author without Action Takers Publishing. So phenomenal publishing firm for sure, and a great first opportunity for me.
Thanks for sharing your experience, because you spot on. I know of a lot of people that have not yet become published because they find it too daunting,
Yeah, it's everything that comes after you write, right? It's a million things.
Absolutely. Tankyo, what was your experience with Action Takers Publishing like from the moment that you decided you wanted to write the story to now? How has it worked for you?
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Like Kaitlin said, you think it's going to be daunting. It's a stress-free zone, with them. Literally, I don't recall being stressed about anything, even when she said overnight. From the beginning to the end, when it comes to questions, and anyone who knows me knows that I ask 101 million questions. I have asked every question. They have answered every question. I go back between Linda and Sally, and it's just super, super easy. And it's no question that's too much or not one too many questions for them. They literally take it on personally, and they are, like Kaitlin said, they are so hands-on. I love that they bring you into the fold once you get started, as if you've been writing books for days. And information, if you need something when it comes to even coming up with ideas, topics, how this should flow. Talking with Linda, she was like, and even you can do this, or maybe you can do this. And it's just like, she just has so much energy that makes you just want to be like, okay, yeah, I can do this. So definitely a wonderful place to be. I can't wait to start the next one with Action Takers. Again, this has been seamless, really has been seamless from what to expect. Even they have a class. She told me right away, sign me up for, like, hey, this class would be good to kind of give you information on what to expect, how to go about, what to do when it comes to publishing. So the class was really good. Just information. And it wasn't information overload for me. It was just enough information, and you're able to go back and look at it. So, you can kind of do it at your own time. So I really, really have enjoyed this process. And I've even told some of my other family members about it who've been like, I've been wanting to write. These are the people. And that's what I'm telling them. These are the people you want to work with, because they make it so easy. So they're truly a blessing is what they are. So I love the company.
Thank you for sharing your experience, and Jessica, what was the experience like for you?
Well, Kaitlin and Tonquer said most of it. I mean, to be honest, I can echo everything that they said. I love that, even down to, they're like, hey, by the way, you don't even have to figure out where to talk about this. Here's all these interview opportunities. Sign up for this, sign up for that. I mean, it was just like, and here you do this, and then you're going to do that. And they edit, you tell your story, they edit it for you just to make sure that, it's exactly the way they want it. You're like, perfect. They're like, send me a picture. You send them a picture, and they'll tell you exactly what resolution they want it in. And it's just basically, they have just a list of check boxes that you need to check. And it's nothing overwhelming. And it's less than 10 things. And at the end of the day, they've already given you everything to fulfill all those things. And you just have to show up. You just have to show up, be involved. And so if you have a story, like Tonquer was saying, I've always had this story and I wanted to tell it, then you feel like not only is it going to be daunting, like Kaitlin said, oh, it's going to be daunting. I don't even know how to get it out there or whatever. But then you're like, why am I telling it? And it's this painful story. It's this whole thing. And I feel like I need to spread this story around and inspire people. But if no one's going to hear it, if I'm just going to try to do this on my own, like, do I really want to do that? It's going to be painful. This is an amazing opportunity, I think, for people like that who have a story that they feel like God's telling them they need to share, that this testimony that God's trying to get out of them and put it out into the world. This is going to go into a ton of places, because not only is it, being published by a company who does this, but it's an anthology where it's going into, it's going in 20 directions, because of course all of the authors are sharing this on their networks. And so your story will be able to get out to a lot more people. And that way you can feel safe in knowing that you did the work to get it into enough hands, like I said before. But they take care of that. And so if you want something seamless, like they said, and you want something easy and stress-free zone, I love that. And they had the chat, like she said, it really was just totally facilitated. And so then everybody was really able to just dig into their story, which is what should happen. It should be more about telling the story authentically than worrying about all of the A to Z and on how to get it out there and published. So then since they take care of that, we were able to just tell our stories authentically, which I think is probably going to make a huge difference in the end result.
Fantastic. And I think one of the things that I've personally found from my experience of working with Action Takers Publishing is that I've walked away with more friends than I had before, because of the relationship that you build with the authors while working in an anthology. I think it's an amazing project to be able to get published. It's a fantastic way to get published the first time, and I've almost seen people who get hooked on doing anthologies, because once that bug is bitten, you feel like you can release more and more and more and more stories. And Linda's got a bunch of titles that I think resonates with a lot of us who live in the real world. So, ladies, thank you so much. It was amazing getting to know each of you better. Tanquia and Kaitlin, you've got a copy of the book. Before we say goodbye, could you hold up that book again so everyone can see the cover of the book? She is an overcomer. And so if that is you, go and get a copy of the book, read their stories, and I hope that you will be inspired by what these ladies have done to also reach out and write your story so that you too can be an overcomer. Thank you, ladies. Thank you to our live audience. Thank you to our replay audience. We appreciate you. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, and we'll see you back on the next episode of Books with Bridgetti.